It says it's live. Let me check Instagram. And it does not look like it wants to go. So, to heck with Instagram. Hello, everybody. This is Leadership Live with Chris Pinkowski and JJ, and the coach. By the way, I've been told that that's my new designator, so I'm going to wear it with a badge of honor here. And today on Leadership Live, we are going to talk about difficult conversations, and that can be difficult conversations with employees, or you can translate that to whatever difficult conversation you're having in your life. Typically, it works all the way across the board. But anyway, Chris, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, JJ. We were just chatting, but I just a month ago I broke my foot, so today I got my cast off, getting into a walking boot, and just getting back to normal. So started off as a good day, and I'm just going to keep that train on running. How you doing?
No, man, I am great, but I don't know if I'm that great. That is a milestone when you have an injury like that and you can take that cast off or take your boot off or whatever the case may be. That's a milestone. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Chris, I have a question for you, brother.
Shoot.
Difficult conversations. What can you give me some examples to get us started with our conversation here about what some of those difficult conversations might look like?
Sure. So difficult conversations is something that unfortunately a lot of people shy away from. Leaders, peers, like you said in the intro, difficult conversations lend themselves to all different aspects of our lives. And a lot of people see those kind of conversations as like rocking the boat. I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. When in reality, those are the kind of conversations that we should be having to help people move forward, move to the next level. Sometimes people do things they don't even realize that is detrimental to them. So it's all in the way that you approach the conversation. Those conversations could be around performance of the people on your team. It could be how one of your peers is doing something that's going to negatively impact the rest of the team. You know, it's not a leader to subordinate relationship. It's a peer relationship. It could even be a leading up, kind of situation where it feels uncomfortable to have those conversations, but getting out of that space of discomfort, at the end of the day, as long as the conversation's had in the right way, and I'm sure we're going to get into how do you have these conversations, but there are so many different categories that fall into that difficult conversation bucket, and I'm looking forward to unpacking them today.
Yeah, me too. So the first thing that comes to mind when I think of difficult conversations is, why are they difficult? So you mentioned discomfort, and if there's discomfort surrounding it, that means it's probably important to you. And whether it's important to you because you're afraid of what the outcome of that will be once that conversation happens, whether positive or negative, or maybe it's going to affect your life in some sort of way with a second and third order effect, or whatever the case may be, the conversation is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the mindset behind that, because I think that's where it starts.
Yeah.
When you go into a difficult conversation, to me, I always think about what the importance of it is and how much will it cost me if I don't have that conversation? Or sometimes more importantly, what's it going to cost that person that I need to have that conversation with if I do not have that conversation?
That's a really great way to think about it. And I think that a lot of people take the opposite approach of, what's it going to cost me if I do have this conversation, because of the fear, right? Because of the discomfort. People put themselves in that situation of like, oh man, you can't take back the words that come out of your mouth.
No,
So
no, you can't.
yeah. And people are very measured, right, with what they say in those situations. And I think a lot of times people are thinking, what's it going to cost me if I say this? As opposed to what you just said, what's it going to cost me if I don't say this? What's it going to cost that other person if I don't say it? And it's really the approach. And we'll get into the approach of it, but that mindset shift alone, that small little nugget of what's it going to cost if I don't versus what's it going to cost if I do, could really make a huge difference in the way someone decides to have that conversation.
You're right. And when you think of the idea of servant leadership, and I know that's how we kind of both practice our businesses here,
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes to servant leadership, you always have to think not just about me. You always have to think about we. So you got to look at the bigger picture. It's almost like, even if it involves you, taking a step back and kind of looking at the whole battlefield when it comes to that difficult conversation, and saying, okay, so it might harm me, but it might not. It might make this other person uncomfortable, but even if it does, what's going to come of that? If I don't have this conversation, there's not going to be a learning opportunity for me, for them. I mean, the whole thing about pushing past complication is that it teaches you something, and if it teaches you something, chances are the other party that's involved in that conversation is also going to have an equal or higher benefit as a result of that. And you got to look at the whole picture when it comes to each one of these things. Yeah. What do you think?
That's right. And it also comes down to the type of people that you have on your team. The people that want to grow, who want to succeed, who want to better their best, they take that kind of conversation in that vein of, hey, JJ just helped me to uncover a blind spot here, or he helped me to realize what I was doing wrong first, and then second, how I can fix it. Those people appreciate those conversations. And it's not until you get to the people that may be on your team who have an ego. We talked about ego last time, and they think that everything they're doing is right. So therefore, if you have that conversation with them, you're going to hurt their feelings. Or you have someone who is super sensitive and you've got to walk on eggshells. Like, if you're able to create and build your team with those, growth-minded individuals, it's so much easier to have those conversations, because those folks want that feedback in order to get better and keep moving.
I agree. And you almost have to do it whether they're comfortable with it or not, because you want to create, whether it's, even if it's just on your team, you want to create that culture that's built around honesty and respect. And you can't earn the respect unless you do the hard things. I always talk about taking the hard right, not the easy left. Well, that's part of it. When you are the leader, you're not leading people if you just take the easy way out all the time. But I want to address Facebook user. I have a feeling it's probably Michael, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it up on the screen here. Facebook user says, the we is most important unless you're mostly interested in serving yourself. Well, Chris, I think you just talked about this.
Yeah.
This is the ego that we're talking about. This is that self-fulfilling prophecy that a lot of these people get caught in, that either takes them in a positive direction sometimes if it drives them to just have the conversation, but it can also take them down a rabbit hole of negative because they're not really listening to the people that are involved in that conversation, even if they do have it.
And that's absolutely right. When you're looking at the bigger picture and you're It's not about your ego, and you're trying to get other people to let go of their ego to see the bigger picture. Having those conversations become less and less difficult, because we have to have the we in mind. It's not a me, it's not a you, it's a we. One of the things that I often talk about with my clients is we attack issues, we don't attack people. So let's combine, see the issue as our joint enemy, and it's the enemy of, what is it? The enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Or
Yes.
ally, something along those lines.
Yes.
But if you take the person and remove them from being embedded in the situation and say, hey, this is the situation here. You and I are on one team. The situation is against us. Now, how do the two of us attack this to make it better? You're joining forces, and that almost immediately lets their guard down, lets their ego down, and creates a we scenario.
Well, first of all, Michael said another comment. You don't always have to be right, even if you're the boss. And he said,
Yes.
and you're right. It's Michael. Yes. I'm glad I'm starting to get used to this. Okay. No, but all of those things are right. Now let's take another spin on that. So if being a leader has a we instead of me mentality, then let's take it one step further and say a servant leader is a person who puts the needs and the welfare of others before themselves.
Mhm.
And whether that's at home in your family or if it's at work, you need to do that, because once you take that step from being the guy that's on the ground doing the work to now you have to be the manager in order to be that effective leader. It's all about doing the hard things and doing what's best for the team.
Yeah.
And if you create, I talked about the culture a little while ago. If you create a culture that, by the way, a lot of families have too, where you always leave the hard stuff alone and you just kind of step back and see how it plays out, you're going to either end up having chaos on your team, or on the other side of that, you're going to have an environment that things go wrong and they never get addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's probably the most common scenario for a difficult conversation, is that people are afraid that they're going to get in trouble, and so they don't go and talk to their manager about stuff.
Right.
And if you're willing to show them that you're going to step out of your comfort zone and talk about the hard stuff, and oh, by the way, not just chastise them for the things that they're doing wrong, potentially, it's a difficult conversation, so I'm going to assume that it's something wrong, and then help them course correct and move in the right direction. If you're willing to do that for them, then when it comes time for them to own up to a mistake that you haven't even heard about yet, then they're probably going to come to you and talk about that, because they don't want, nobody shows up to work every day trying to screw things up. It
Right.
may seem like that sometimes, but usually if you have that person that is constantly making the same mistakes over and over, you're probably not doing something as a leader to help them learn so that they don't keep on making those mistakes. Always remember that.
Yeah, you're right. And creating that culture of having those conversations when things happen, that's another thing that people get wrong often is, I'm going to let this breathe. I'm not going to talk about it right away. And by right away, I don't mean like the second it happens, unless it's catastrophic and you have to like spring into action. But it's not something that you let go for a week, a month, wait until the quarterly review. Things need to be addressed in a timely manner so that people understand and learn from it. One of the analogies that I like to use when I'm talking about this is, it's like a puppy. And when you're potty training your puppy to go outside and they have an accident in the house, you don't just disregard that accident and not correct the dog, right? You have to correct the dog so that they learn that, hey, you don't drop a big steaming deuce in the living room, you can need to go outside, right? So you've got to address these things right away. But when you build a culture that is open, that is honest, has accountability, very high up in the value chain, then the discomfort of those conversations starts to become less and less, right? You and I both know that if you continue to do something that you're uncomfortable with over time, you become comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with a conversation and when they're difficult. It's, hey, look, this is how we approach things. We attack issues, not people. And let's look at the objective criteria around it. Let's figure out the root cause. Let's talk about it. Now, of course, there's a people component, right? Because I'm going to use our favorite guy, Joe Snuffy. If Joe Snuffy just screwed something up big time, you've got to talk to Joe about it. But you've got to look at it and say, all right, look, this is what happened. This is how we need to fix it. This is how we need to prevent it from going forward. But, you have to address him, but it's not, Joe, this is what you did. Joe, boom, boom, boom. Like, you're not jamming it in his face. You're talking about the issue, talking about what happened. Joe just happens to be the person who caused it. And that's why you're having the conversation with him.
You're right. And that is so important. I like the analogy you used about the puppy, because as different as we may treat our pets, they're still a member of the family. And you may stick their nose close to it, make them smell it and say no. But then what do? You take them outside, teach them the correct way, and then you give them a treat and say, good boy, good girl. Well, it doesn't really need to work differently than that in the work environment. If people know that you're going to help them course correct, and you're going to take I say mistakes when I'm having conversations like this, but really mistakes and failures are just opportunities to learn and grow. Right. Because honestly, we always remember the negative stuff. I don't know why. You can do 1,000 good things, and other people and yourself, you will always remember the negative things first.
Yep.
But if you have somebody, a leader, not a manager, because a manager is somebody that you work for that just beats up on you for deadlines and missed deadlines and bad performance and all kinds of stuff. But a leader will take the time to help you course correct, guide you through the path to correct your mistakes and actions when they're not favorable for the job, and help you learn and grow as a person. And by the way, the second one is the one you want to be, in case anybody listening got anything else out of that. You want to be a leader, not just a manager, and know they are not the same thing. They are definitely separate. There are CEOs that are not leaders.
Right.
I don't care if you say they have a leadership position. Well, there are all kinds of positions in life, but they're not all leadership based. So you have to have a mindset to serve others when it comes to leaders. But that same process that we use for that puppy to help that puppy learn and grow, we can do the same thing with every single one of our employees. So I love that analogy.
Yeah. And, the thing that you said too is that what softens the difficult conversations is having both sides of the equation, right? You never just, whether you're trying to lead up, right? You never bring a problem to your boss without a proposed solution. And the same thing when you're leading others. If there's something that just happened, you can't just drop on their lap, hey, Joe, you just screwed this up, and then walk away and let them figure it out. It's your job, right? You're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You don't just hand someone the peanut butter and walk away with the jelly.
No.
Like, here's the entire sandwich here. So it has to go hand in hand when you're having these conversations. Now, there are other types of difficult conversations that they don't all, right? This is that dichotomy. And we always talk about dichotomies here. One difficult conversation is when you've got to let someone go. right? That is not easy.
Man.
It's difficult for you as the person delivering the message. It's also difficult for the person who's receiving the message. Now, if you have led and managed them correctly, it shouldn't come as a surprise to them, right? If you've tried to help them improve their performance, if you have identified these are the deficiencies, here's how I'm going to help you do it, these are the timeframes that we have, someone knows. I think there's something in people's gut. They know when they get called into the office, like, I'm about to lose my job today.
Yep.
Because I know that I've been given a dozen chances, I haven't taken advantage of them, and I'm about to get sacked. That still doesn't make it any easier on the leader. And it's not incumbent on you in a situation like that where you're letting someone go to say to them, hey, you know what? Not only am I letting you go, but these are the things that you could have done to avoid it. That could actually open you up to other issues that could be legal, could be whatever. So there are times that you don't have to provide the jelly to that peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah.
So there's a delicate balance, right? When it's an ongoing relationship, you want to provide the prescription for going forward in a positive way. But then there are difficult conversations when, hey, look, we're about to end this relationship right now, and this is it. And, we're going to part ways, no hard feelings, but it's just not working out.
Man, I wish I would have known that in high school.
Yeah.
Oh man. No, you're absolutely right, Chris. And it doesn't matter if it's letting them go from the job or if it's just something minor. If somebody gets in a fight at work and then you make a plan to avoid that situation again, and in that initial plan, of course, termination is going to be mentioned because you can't just go around beating the snot out of people at work. Right. But if you do these things, your sins will be forgiven, sort of a thing. And if they don't, so it's a part of setting and managing expectations, which I know we've talked about before. But if you don't set that expectation, if you don't communicate consistently and often with everyone, not just the guy that you're dealing with in that moment, then everything is going to be a surprise. It's all part of leadership. If people were to understand the basics of communicating through, following up from a difficult conversation, through, making sure they do performance evaluations all the time, and all of these things, those are all leadership, and they're rooted in the idea that nobody is going to be derailed at any certain moment. When you work for a smaller company that's inexperienced and they've never had somebody work for them before, and management is new to them, and they start having employees, these difficult things tend to happen.
Yes.
To avoid that, invest in yourself, invest in your business, and make sure you are avoiding these complications just by knowing what you need to know. But then you have to practice it. You can't just learn things. You have to take action on them too. But, that's why leadership is so important. A difficult conversation doesn't have to stay difficult. If you build a culture in your organization surrounding servant leadership, then everybody is always going to expect, say Chris is the manager in that organization. They know, good, bad, right, or wrong, Chris is going to talk to him no matter what. If you do something wrong, Chris is going to help you through it. If you do something right, Chris is going to say, high five, buddy. Good job on that one. Let's keep up the good work. Oh, by the way, how's your mom and your dog and your goldfish?
Right. And, that's the other thing too. The people that you lead have to know that you've got their back. And when you bring something to their attention, that their motivation to fix it is to help you to be better and to help the organization to move forward, right? If you create an environment, and I've seen this in other organizations where people are throwing others under the bus, that is a guaranteed recipe for no one bringing things to your attention. So your people need to know that you've got their back, that you've got their best interest, and that when you come to them with a challenge, that they're going to be willing to roll up their sleeves and help you figure out what that challenge is. And also, like you said, you've got to be praising when they're doing things right. You've got to be the person who's saying, all right, let's get down to business and figure this out. Leadership is so often seen from, looking up and down, or down and into the organization, but that's not always the case.
No.
There are so many layers to it.
Yep.
But being accessible, being approachable, those are all pieces that you need to instill into your culture. That's going to help to have those conversations and for them to be less difficult, less uncomfortable.
Yes, I agree. And that can be an entire topic within itself if we haven't covered it already.
Yeah.
And that layering that you're talking about is actually creating a decentralized leadership structure in your organization.
Yep.
And it starts at the top. And you got to set the precedent by teaching how you want people to act through your values, your mission. And if they're supposed to be a certain way, you communicate tasks to go down the line, and then do evaluations and all of those things. It needs to be set at the top and then followed up with at every tier of leadership, or should I say management within your organization.
Yeah.
And it's really built around trust. So you say, this is how I need it to operate. And then if you do it this way, then I'm going to give you a gift, everybody. I'm going to give you the gift of my trust. And I'm going to allow you to make decisions at your level. I don't want to micromanage. We're a decent sized business. It is now your time to hold the reins of decision making. Please do not come to me with every single decision. If you have a question, that's great. But otherwise, I trust you to do what you have to do.
That's right.
Take care of your people, man. That's all you got to say. And, when you can create a culture that's like that, and we can have a whole call specifically about that, because it's, in my opinion, it's the only way to run an organization.
No, you and I are on the same page, and we've talked about that. And it probably is worthy of an entire session at some point.
Yes.
And I know that we're getting close on time,
Yes.
but I just want to bring in one other thing that's very important to the difficult conversations kind of matrix here, but it's emotional intelligence. It's being able to read the room and understanding who you're having that conversation with, because some people like it, the bluff approach, right? Bottom line up front, hit me with it. Let's have that conversation. Other people like the, hey, let's tiptoe into this a little bit before we get into the deep end. So either way, you've got to be able to take different approaches in order to come to the same outcome. And that requires that emotional intelligence, understanding who the conversation's with, how they're going to be perceiving this conversation, and then taking it accordingly.
It was spoken in my creed as a non-commissioned officer before I commissioned to be a warrant officer. I know my soldiers, and I will place their needs above my own, and I will communicate consistently with my soldiers, and I will never leave them uninformed. And so that means the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm not just talking about Clint Eastwood here. So no, we'll go ahead and wrap it up now. We're at 29 minutes, and then I'll give you an opportunity to do some closing comments. But if this information resonates with you, and I've learned lately from other people that apparently that's my word, is resonates. But if this information resonates with you, please like it, subscribe to it, share it, repost it, or most importantly, just keep the conversation going. If you have any questions, comments, if you want to complain about something we said, we're going to learn something from any of those things. So make sure you just put that comment below this or next to it or whatever it looks like wherever you see this video, and just keep the conversation going. Chris, I appreciate you being a part of this with me. I think these calls are amazing. I love teaching an audience things. Do you have any closing comments for the group?
The only thing I'm going to close with is I'm going to circle back to the very beginning, and I'm going to challenge people to change their mentality around having difficult conversations and think about, what's it going to cost me if I don't have this conversation? What's it going to cost the other person if I don't have this conversation? Stop putting it on you and what's it going to cost you if you do, but what's it going to cost you if you don't? I'm stealing that from you, JJ, but I think that was such a valuable nugget that it's worth repeating as we wrap up for today.
I agree. Make sure that when you're asking yourself that question, you're looking at how beneficial it can be. That's the cost if you don't. That's great. This was a wonderful call. I look forward to doing this again with you in a couple weeks, Chris.
Yes, sir. Me too.
All right. Take care, everybody.
All right, everybody. See ya.